the pitfalls that everybody thinks that they're gonna get stuck on, like their failures or, "Oh, it didn't work out. Oh, I made a mistake," or that's exactly what needs to happen. Not because you need failure, because everyone's gonna go through failure. The difference is if you're gonna get back up, pick yourself up, they say, by your proverbial bootstraps, or you dust yourself off, you fall off a horse, you get right back on. Thing is, failure is key because it's not about the failing, it's
Mhm.
about getting back up and doing it again and doing it again and doing it again. And then one of those times is going to work out. And if it didn't, you have a whole lot of experience.
You're listening to the Careers Without Connections podcast, the podcast for underrepresented professionals, where we discuss all things related to building your career from scratch and navigating unfamiliar spaces in professional environments. I'm your host, Gianna Linares, and today our guest is Bill Vega. Bill was born in New Jersey to Ecuadorian immigrants. He is a first generation student, and he currently holds a bachelor's degree in management and supervision from Daytona State College. Bill is now a distinguished leader and entrepreneur here in Georgia. He is the CEO of Albany Amusement, an entertainment and amusement company with operations spanning from Florida all the way to Ohio. He is the owner of Vegas Funding Partners, which he founded in 1995, and he also brings years of experience as the owner and operator in the restaurant industry, having owned and operated more than 20 restaurants across Florida and Georgia. Bill has served on the board of the Georgia Amusement and Music Operations Association, which is the largest amusement association in the nation. In this role, he works closely with several state agencies and is actively involved in amusement industry policy. Bill is also the current president of the Association of Ecuadorians in Georgia. He sits on the board for Latinx and the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and he is also an ambassador for the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. In his personal life, he is an active member of the Sherwood Baptist Church in Albany, Georgia, and he leads several volunteer efforts in Southwest Georgia communities, such as disaster relief and food distribution initiatives. Welcome, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I look forward to this interview.
I would love to hear, did you always know that you were going to enter your career as an entrepreneur? Was that always your long-term plan and your goal? And if so, how did these business ideas initially come to life?
The entrepreneurial spirit definitely came from my parents. I believe it came maybe even from my grandparents. My father was always an entrepreneur. He worked with my mom. They had several different businesses, both in the United States and abroad in Ecuador. My grandfather was also a plantation owner, and they did the sharecrops. In our home around the dinner table, we always talk business. My parents weren't doctors or lawyers, so our small talk was always around just fixing ideas, finding solutions. We weren't gossiping or talking about the other families. We were always problem solving. The mentality was definitely the mindset shifts were set when I was very young.
Were you helping out with the businesses at that younger age as well? Were they asking you to get involved in any way?
Well, I was the youngest of six. One of my older brothers passed when he was a baby, so there's five of us. They always say the legend has that I was the bank. I was always lending my older brothers money, but I think it was more because they were teenagers. But different business that we started. I started when I was young. I started at a flea market when I was 16 years old. We always helped around the family business. There was always different activities going on. We were also the first family to immigrate into the United States. So our home was constantly revolving. Every 3 or 4 months, a new family member will come, an aunt, a cousin, a family friend. We will get them a job, 3 or 4 months, get them an own apartment. And my parents were always the matriarchs, patriarchs, Uncle Hector. How do you open a bank account? I want to buy a car. I want to buy a house. I'm having this issue or whatnot. And same thing with the wives with my mom. So there was always that entrepreneurial spirit. There was always that service spirit in my household.
I want to backtrack a little bit and kind of go back to the discussion of your upbringing and you being the first in your family to immigrate. I wanted to know how those lived experience have transferred over into you today and how that has kind of shaped you and influenced you as you've gone through life being a first generation student, but also being a trailblazer. as a Latino entrepreneur?
Thank you. First, I have to attribute a lot to my faith. The Lord has blessed me in countless ways. Then, of course, just as you mentioned, in my upbringing, I wasn't groomed to a position, but there was just a certain things that I got to see as being a first generation immigrant, having to translate for my mother, all the doctor's appointments, the PTA meetings, the parent teacher conferences, seeing able to see just the navigation of it all again as being a first generation. And then on the other part of it, the empathy of the future generations that were coming. Most people that come here, they come for dreams. They come to have a better opportunity. A lot of, especially the people that emigrated from Ecuador, South America, they were professionals. They already had their degrees, lawyers, doctors, and accountants, engineers, and they would have to come and start fresh again, starting all over again. And but it was not for naught. They did it for a reason. It was very intentional. They sacrificed themselves for us. I always tell people, I'm your future children. I'm the future generation. Just fast forward a couple of years. So the intentionality of it all, that's where it begins. The progression, it could be education, it could be a formal college education, it could be a trade school. There's a lot of different ways that opportunity presents itself in the United States, but you have to be prepared. You have to have the intentionality of to be able to strike when the moment's right. Even when it doesn't feel that way, and you have to be ready to act. Very intentional.
How do you know when the moment's right? What is that? Is that an instinct or is it more of something that you see coming?
A lot of it has to be getting prepared. I was just in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we entered the meeting, and it's about 5 or 6 people. And out of the 5 or 6 people that were there, only two of us had pen and paper ready. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, we're going into a meeting. So what were your intentions of what were you expecting to get out of this meeting? So the expectations have to do a lot with that analysis. What am I expecting? Like when I wake up, I'm already expecting the Lord to. I'm like, I say, okay, Lord, thank you very much for this beautiful day. Thank you for the opportunity to impact someone else today. Who am I going to impact in your name? I don't. When you say about the instincts, I try not to act out of my impulses. I have a three rule that I go by. I go by the best case scenario, worst case scenario, and most probable case scenario. In finances, or if you're doing some kind of business, the best case scenario, oh, you open up a second location, you double your business, you expand more markets. That's the best case scenario. What's the worst case scenario? That you lose all the investment, but it's got to be an investment. A lot of people sometimes they'll put in, "Oh, I have some money to invest," but if it's your rent money or your power money, that's not an investment. That's a gamble, and it's all right. But just don't kid yourself into what you're investing. And then you always prepare. You hope for the best. You prepare for the worst, but it falls somewhere in the middle. So it falls somewhere right in that the most probable case scenario. And that's where we're at right now. When you decide very analytical. You don't do, when I in my investments or my homes or anything like that, I don't decide on the color or the yard, the landscaping. All those kind of things can be changed. There are certain business models, the business decisions that you follow. And as far as you deviate from them, but you also stick to the plan. You have to have that goal mindset. Where is it that you're going? If you don't have a goal in mind, if you don't have it set, I would say 2 plus 3 is 5. You have to know where you're at. 2, you kind of know where you need to want to go. 5, so you need a 3. That 3 gets you to that 5. But if you don't know where you're at, if you're at 1, you add a 3, you're still only going to get to 4. So you need to have both. You need to know exactly where you're at. You need to know where you're going, and that helps you prepare for what's coming next with that little gap that you need. So that's a little explanation
Mhm.
of how do you know to strike, be prepared.
It's interesting that you bring up the aspect of preparedness because I've been talking to other first generation Latinos as well. A lot of us who, we've graduated within recent years, or I did a guest interview just yesterday. She graduated this week. A lot of us kind of bring up that aspect of preparedness of constantly feeling like we have to be over prepared. And even though we are over prepared, we don't always feel like we still struggle with those aspects of imposter syndrome, which you don't strike me as someone that has imposter syndrome, but I don't want to speak for you. Is that something you'd want to touch on?
One of the things that I always tell people is you have to, again, I'm a person of faith, and scripture tells us
Mhm.
to keep every thought captive. That's the thing. we're the lid of our organizations. We're the top. We're only going to grow. The organization will only grow as much as we can grow. And if you're the lid of your organization, that's it. That's the top of it. So we have to be able to think a little bit outside the box, to be able to think a lot bigger. When I think of things that in my careers that that have helped me, and it's part of that. It's part of that possibility thinking. I'm an answer person. I don't think that there's just problems. I just problems that haven't gotten an answer to it yet. There's always it may not be the time that you want it to be. It may be a different timing. The circumstances may that the answer may not be the one you want, but there's always an answer. And then when you start getting to like really be to think a little bit further, there may be two or three answers. And as a leader, your responsibility is to pick the best of the answers, not just if there's an answer. So again, that possibility thinking opens up to a lot more. What if this is possible? What if I don't put limitations on my mind as to seed capital, raising capital? I'm not expecting of a 10% growth, or 15% growth, or 20% growth. I'm expecting of a growth by factors of two times, five times, 10 times growth, and that's what we're shooting for. We're shooting for a home run. We're shooting for the stars. We're not looking for a base hit, a single or double. Those are nice, but if you want to win, you gotta shoot for that home run. And be prepared, of course. Be prepared when it comes, because you don't want to be trying to grow two times, 10 times, 10x and not be prepared. You have to have those systems and procedures in place. You have to have, again, the intentionality, that preparedness. And imposter syndrome, that would always happen. But that's about you and your mentality. You check most of the things that happen that we think may happen never happen. But we get stuck in that portion of it. And your mind, it's your greatest asset, but at the same time, it could be your greatest weakness. And you controlling the thoughts that you have, controlling the processes, controlling the distractions that you have within your day, or something similar. It's like you're checking your emails or checking your social media or your text. I've learned to only check my emails twice in the morning, twice in the afternoons. And something might come in through, but I won't answer it. I'll flag it to get to be done later on. But everybody's got a little bit different way that I'm more of a big idea person. I'm not that great with the details. So since I know that that's something that I need to work on already, I have beforehand in place my systems and procedures to handle that, to handle my weakness, to handle or to enhance my strengths with the bigger ideas, with the problem solving, with the mindset thinking.
I feel like I'm the opposite. I feel like I'm very much someone who gets stuck in the details and I struggle to follow through with the actions. I would say this podcast is the first thing that I've done in several years that I was like, let me just I filmed my first episode. I didn't even have the title yet. And I brought up to my brother the other day that I'd finally started the podcast. And he was like, you've been saying you want to do that for 2 years. I was shocked that it had been that long. Title was undecided in my first episode. I'm still working on the cover art, still working on the brand colors, doing a brand shoot this weekend. But I think your point of knowing your strengths and weaknesses, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, is very important and something that a lot of people overlook.
One thing that you mentioned right now, there's two decision-making models that people have. Sometimes they plan on something, or they decide they're going to do something. They start planning it, and then they commit to do it. And that's when most people get stuck in. And they get stuck where in that planning stage, and they never actually go into it because they get stuck in the planning. And part of that, the planning part, is that they want perfection. And you're trying to make sure the reason why you're planning so much, because you don't want anything to come out that
Mhm.
any surprises, or anything that didn't come out the way you thought it was going to come out. But and that's a part of us wanting to control it. But as you let go of it, as you let things kind of flow, more than likely most of the stuff that you fret about, that you're thinking about, that's could go wrong, will never go wrong. It's good to plan it, of course, but don't get stuck in that planning stage. Or the other decision making model, like, okay, I'm going to do something, I'm going to jump out, I'm going to commit to it. How you going to do it? I don't know, but I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to get it done. It's going to happen. It's just, you just jump in, almost like jumping into the water without learning how to swim. And in that case, you're going to learn how to swim pretty quick. And that's the same thing. A lot of us get
Yeah.
stuck in that planning stage, and which is great. But
Mhm.
once you just throw yourself out there and you just don't know what's going to happen, That's where the real growth, that's where the pain happens, that's where the growth happens. That's when they tell you that it's the journey, that's the journey. And then seeing you're gonna start learning. Of course, you can take a lot of experiences from others. That's what I thought when I was being the youngest of my 5. I thought, "Oh my goodness, I'm not gonna make those mistakes," but I went I dove right ahead into every single one of them. And, you have to kinda live your own life. You can get other people's experiences, but you're gonna have to go through them. And the pitfalls that everybody thinks that they're gonna get stuck on, like their failures or, "Oh, it didn't work out. Oh, I made a mistake," or that's exactly what needs to happen. Not because you need failure, because everyone's gonna go through failure. The difference is if you're gonna get back up, pick yourself up, they say, by your proverbial bootstraps, or you dust yourself off, you fall off a horse, you get right back on, whatever analogy you wanna use. The thing is, failure is key because it's not about the failing, it's
Mhm.
about getting back up and doing it again and doing it again and doing it again. And then one of those times is going to work out. And if it didn't, you have a whole lot of experience it. So when it does present itself, again, that's that preparing. It's just like a soldier. He doesn't prepare for a situation. He prepares in case a situation arises. When the bullets go flying, everybody runs away from danger. They run to the danger. They learn to harness that adrenaline so that it works in their favor.
Would you be comfortable sharing about a failure that you had in your business? It doesn't have to be a recent one, but maybe something that you took a really valuable lesson away from?
Definitely, definitely. Well, 2007, 2008, when the housing market, the bubble burst, I was affected by that for many, many years. But having just been born in the United States, I always say I just had a special blessing. I was always known as having the Midas touch. Everything that myself or my brothers would run would do really well. In 2006, we sold our last restaurant. We bought a mortgage broker business. We got into the mortgage broker business. And that went incredibly well until the housing bubble burst 2007, 2008. I lost everything. I lost my house, my cars, my keys, the accounts. We went to bankruptcy. It was a very revealing time for myself. It wasn't the story that I had thought I was going to have. I'm being American born, college educated. That was not supposed to be my story, but it was. The housing market when it burst, left everyone in the financial industry looking for something to do. But for me, it was a moment of transformation, and in the sense that I was maybe a little too prideful up till then. Up to then, I would be look at my house, look at my car, look at my bank account, look what I've done with my ingenuity, with my business savvy. And the Lord didn't give me a slice of humble pie; He gave me the whole pie. And I'm very appreciative of that because that's what I needed. I need to be reckoned and remember who my blessings come from. And things have changed definitely since that moment. I went to work back as a dishwasher at a restaurant that I used to own. And again, nothing's wrong with, working a dishwasher job, but at a place where I used to own before, it kind of hurt. It kind of hurt my pride, my ego. But at the same time, it taught me that you're never too good for any kind of job. I would wash the pots and pans, and they're like, "Well, you're making us look bad." I'm like, "Well, I'm not working for you. I'm working unto the Lord. You're just getting my paycheck through you, and that's how you do it. You work your best no matter what you do. Being the CEO or being a dishwasher, you give it your all the time. You never get out work. You never give it a thought. You never give Nobody's gonna give more heart than you do. When we own the restaurant, so people will say, "Why does your food taste so much better?" I'm like, "The same reason why your mom's food tastes better. She cooks it with love. There has to be a reason why." Once you find that why, that makes all the hard nights, all the sleepless nights, all that extra work. Your why is what your determining factor. Your why could be changing over the years. For a long time, my why was me. Then when I had my children, my why was my children. Now it's going to be my grandchildren soon. But things may change in your life, your priorities change, but you have to, again, that 2 plus 3 is 5. You got to know where you stand, you got to know what you want, and then you know exactly what you need to fix. Life's going to give you surprises and challenges, but those failures, again, that's where the growth happens. I think that when there's a small problem, I think, oh, okay, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to solve it. And my intelligence, my savvy, my this, my that. The bigger the problem gets, I realize, hey, this is out of my ballpark. This is not, the ball's not in my court. This is something that God has to deal with. And as the bigger the problem gets, I'm like watching. I'm on the couch. I got my bucket of popcorn. I'm watching. I'm like, all right, Lord, let me see what you're going to do with this movie because it can't. Obviously, I can't do something about it. So as the bigger the problem gets, some people say, "Bill, why are you so happy? Why are you not nervous? Why are you like nothing's going on?" I'm like, "No, because I know that everything that I may do is pretty much an illusion. Once you work in the will of the Lord, then things don't always work out easy, but you know you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Whenever you just do it out of your own gut feeling or your own will, it's a 50-50 chance. It might go well, it may not go well, but it's not the purpose that you have for your life. Find that purpose, find that why, find what makes you tick. I would say, how do you find your purpose? What makes you cry? What makes you happy? And those are your whys. What gives you that righteous indignation? I want to change things. Those are the things that we need to. Right now, we're at a point in the demographics of this nation where we can make a change. We have to be a change. We have to be willing to embed ourselves in the decision-making process at whatever level. It could be at your school board. It could be your city council, your county commission, and your mayoral offices. You could be in the state level, it could be in the governor level. Wherever your circle of influence, you have to make that change. It starts in your living room, it starts in your kitchen table, it starts in the representing. I tell my children, we're ambassadors of our culture. We're in rural Southwest Georgia. We tell them, hey, we're from Ecuador. They always say, what part of Mexico is that from? I'm like, no, it's a whole nother country. And it's just that they haven't been exposed. A lot of the people that live in our areas, they haven't left the country. They haven't left the state. And when we invite them to meet our culture, to have a ceviche or some roasted pork, they're like, "Wow, this tastes so great." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a whole nother country." And I always tell people it's like giving a northerner grits. They may not understand it, but they like it.
I grew up on the West Coast in Oregon. I never had a large population of Latinos around me. I always thought everywhere I went, I was going to be one of a few. And when I was in Philly for a little bit, I worked for a council member. She was the only Latina of the 17 electeds. And so I was in a little bit of a Latino bubble. But now I've relocated to Atlanta, Georgia. And in general, the Latinos in politics, the Latinos in government, it's a small amount of us. Whenever I run into other Latinos at the Capitol, elected officials, they get excited to see me and they want to connect. And we want to talk about, like how can we do things for the community and have them involved and engaged. But I say that because I feel like the piece that you were talking about where you were saying that exposure and inviting people in to see, I feel like that is a really important piece, especially as the demographics are shifting and Latinos and a lot of other minorities, like we're getting ready to be the majority, just the way the population demographics are changing. And I feel like right now, like I'm in a lot of spaces where people like me, people that where I come from, like I'm one of the first, if not the first, still, even though we're living in 2026. And I feel like that exposure is so important because people getting to work with me and, I do my best, of course, to work hard and make good impressions and leave a good impression, even if I'm, planning on moving to the next step. But being able to step away from that and them saying that, I worked with Gianna and she had this really interesting background and she was a hard worker and she was creative and she had these different ideas and she was able to bring in these unique perspectives because of what she came from. Like I'm a pretty firm believer in like just the exposure can play such an important role in changing the dynamics of how things are.
And that's exactly, when I first started the conversation, like I said, my parents were entrepreneurs. Their parents were entrepreneurs. Maybe they were doctors or lawyers who would have been different conversations over the dinner table. But that's what we talked about. We talked about different problems, how we solve problems. There weren't the difficulties. There were just things that needed to be solved. And it gave us a totally different perspective. My eldest son, he's in the computer industry. He's a computer programmer. And the way he looks at when they go into the boardrooms, he can see it from a very analytical mind. But then again, he's able to see things from a entrepreneurial perspective that most of his teammates don't have. They were educated within a very structured family or either other professionals, but they didn't really deal with the entrepreneurial aspects of business. Sometimes when you don't know where that next paycheck is coming from, it puts things a lot into perspective. Everybody else gets paid, and you may or may not get paid at the end of the week. In the beginning, so those learning curves really add to it enriches all your experiences. And when you talk to people, you talk to them from a point of empathy because you went through it. Again, having that first generation immigrant experience, being the first generation to apply for college, nobody knew what the T was or early admission or Ivy Leagues or any of that kind of lingo. That was all strange to me. But I make sure that if you cross my sphere of influence now and you're a high school kid and I don't ask you what your plans are, and it doesn't have to be college, but you have to have some kind of plans. And you're just around me, you're gonna feel that. You're gonna feel that connection, you're gonna feel that love, you're gonna feel that guidance. Sometimes, it's not, people don't want to know it, but it's here. I just always want to make sure that people understand use me as a resource. I am your future you 20, 30 years from now, maybe 50, but still.
You had said something really important at our conversation at lunch the other day. We were talking about how you were saying we're having to do all this now, go out of our ways to be those resources. And a lot of us are having to learn things for the first time and just be prepared in a certain way. But you had said something along the lines of it's disappointing that we're having to do it now to an extent. But if we have to do it again, like if my son has to do this for his kids, then we did something wrong. Do you recall that conversation?
Definitely. That's one of the conversations that I have to have. This is before Trump. This is before immigration. It's been happening in our communities for so many decades. The lesson is that once my boys were of driving age, I had to give them a how to survive a police encounter. You have 30 seconds to roll down your windows, turn on the lights, have your insurance, registration, your license, your hands on the dashboard, on the steering wheel. When the officer comes, yes, sir, no, sir. Forget about your rights and anything like that. You want to make sure he feels very safe and comfortable. And that's just the reality of what the situation is today. Will something probably happen for him? Probably not. Well, he might just get a warning or, hey, your tail light's out or something like that. Maybe, probably. But again, best case, worst case, most probable. You have to prepare for that worst case. And that's what I have to educate them on. Now, as terrible and as tragic as that lesson may be, what would be more tragic would be if I had to teach that same lesson to my grandson. The tragic part about that means that I didn't take care of the problem, that I kicked that proverbial can down the road, that I let somebody else deal with it. The only reason we're dealing with the problems that we have today is because the people in generations past didn't solve it. Immigration, the right, the left, Republican, Democrat didn't make it. Who's in power? It was such a hard topic to deal with. They just rather just kick that proverbial can down the road. And today we're in 2026 and we're still dealing with so many of the issues that we have been dealing with as immigrants for hundreds of years now. We're going to celebrate a 250-year anniversary as a nation. And that is a momentous moment, and we should be all celebrating the richness of our different heritages and our backgrounds and our cultures. When they used to say melting pot, it really meant something good. It wasn't as a Crayola melting pot. It was melting pot of languages and cultures and ethnicities and food, and that's the fabric that makes America great. America never stopped being great. We just started to being polarized and being divided and rich and have nots and white and black and Hispanic, Latino and Asian and every kind of polarization. But my community doesn't have that. My neighborhood doesn't have that. That's what the media wants you to think. There's so much more that we have in common than what separates us. We need to focus on that. But how do we do that? By breaking bread, inviting people to our homes, inviting them to eat dinner, inviting them to have lunch, exposing them to the different things that you may have culturally, ethnically, professionally. There's so much more richness that we have to offer. It's a beautiful thing. I'm really expecting great things to happen. I'm expecting of things to change because it has to. I am not going to leave this same world the same way for my grandchildren.
That is kind of one of the goals that I have with this podcast, to go back to your point about your why. And I was praying about it too. I was saying, "Is this what you want me to do? What do you want me to do with it?" It was something I just put off for so long. I kind of got distracted with these different ideas. When I first met you, I was trying to start a ghostwriting business, and then I was trying to do content creation on TikTok at the same time and just trying to do a lot of things. And I was like, I need to pick one thing that aligns with my purpose and my why. I decided, let me hone in on the podcast. Let me pick one thing. Let me go at it 100% and see where it goes. But the other day, I was sitting down and I was writing, what is like my long term goal for this? Because I want to do, to your point of, I want to have a goal and I wanted to do short term, a few months. What is my goal this week? What is my goal a few months from now? What's my goal like a year's? What's the big dream? What I wrote down was for this next generation, the number of first generation students are increasing, the number of Latinos that are entrepreneurs are increasing, minorities are holding positions in society that we didn't previously. Even women, like what in the 1970s was when we were first allowed to have credit cards. But all of that to say, one of my goals was to have this podcast be a plethora of resources for this incoming wave of underrepresented professionals who I anticipate and expect to hold a lot more decision making roles than our population does right now.
One of the things that I like to hone in, the FBI has their top most wanted list, the 10 top criminals that they're after. As a Hispanic community within our Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or the Association of Ecuadorians or Latinx, I challenge them, do we have a top 10 board of directors list? Top 10 seats at board of directors companies here, the most impactful in Atlanta, in Georgia. We have Delta, we have Home Depot, we have so many UPS, so many large corporations that have their headquarters here that can have that influence. Are we positioning ourselves to become on those boards? Are we grooming our children for those positions? That intentionality, that reckoning, we're going to be a majority in this nation, but are we prepared to lead? Or are we going to continue to be led? And that just it all depends on leadership. The time that you're taking, I commend you for what you're doing, for getting started. It's scary. It's scary because you don't know what you're going to do or you're not prepared. Like you said, that imposter syndrome, but it all falls away once you start doing it. Once you start doing it, I tell people, if you want to be a real estate investor, then you start doing what real estate investors do. If you want to be a marathon runner, you're not
Hmm.
going to be a marathon runner sitting in the couch. You got to go out there and start practicing. You got to practice. What is it that you want to do? And then you just follow those instructions. It's not that hard. Success is not hard. I forget the name of this quote that said, if knowledge was the answer, we would all be rich with six-pack abs because knowing how to get there is not that hard. And you know what you need to do, how to eat and work out and all that.
Hmm.
But to get those six-pack abs, it's not that easy. So the same thing, just because you think you know the steps, but you need to do them, you need to apply them. You already took that first step. Just this interview alone is proof of that. Congratulations.
Thank you. On the topic of you saying success is not that hard, the other really interesting thing that you said to me at lunch the other day that I could have easily stayed and talked to you about for another hour, but you paused and you asked me, why does making money have to be hard? That's a mindset. And earlier you were also talking about how you can control your thoughts. I just want to hear more about that mindset shift. And can you share more about how you've developed that perspective, or is that something you've always had? Something you were, like, raised with in your entrepreneurial family?
I think there was a lot of it that I was bred a certain way to think a certain ways, but it really comes down to yourself. That mindset shift, what you're referring to is everybody always says, if money wasn't an issue, what would you do? Then people say, of course, they're very philanthropic. Oh, I would dedicate my life to this, help the poor. But what money reveals is what's in your heart. If you're a stingy person, it's going to reveal more stinginess. If you're a generous person, it's just going to reveal more generosity. Whatever is in your heart, that's what money reveals. But when we start off the conversation, if money wasn't an issue, we're already placing money as an issue. We're saying, oh, okay, so that's the biggest issue. If that wasn't an issue, then you would do this. That's the starting point of that mental shift. Money isn't an issue. There's plenty of money out there. It's just getting it for your cause or for your advantage or for what you're looking for. But if the Lord has a blessing for you, there ain't nothing in the world that's going to be able to stop it. The only thing that might stop it is, again, our mentality, our ability to receive, our ability to think. You ask me like something tangible. I used to live in Florida and my family was in New Jersey. So I would always have this analogy. I would always say, I don't need to get to Miami to know that I was going south. I could just see the numbers going down on the highway, the mile markers. There are times that controlling anger, we'll be in the car, we'll be driving, and we'll remember something like a song. A song has the ability to bring us back memories, decades ago, and make us feel really, really happy and joyful. Or if it's a sad song, it might make us cry. But the point is that your body is having a physical reaction, like almost like PTSD. It's having a physical reaction to whatever we're listening to. And our body's listening to, like, if we're happy, our body will be happy. So I would say, like, I don't need to go to Miami to know that I'm going south. I don't need to get all upset. The moment I hear that song, I'm like, whoa. If I continue to listen to that song, I'm gonna get more sad. I might get depressed. I might start changing a Spotify playlist to something sad or something, and it might take me all the way down a way where I didn't want to go. But I kind of led that way to myself. If I would have just noticed, hey, what happens when I hear that song? It's a trigger point. Sometimes I'll be driving in the car and I'll get upset and I'll be like really worked up, and then I look around and I'm in the car all by myself. And I'm like, "What are you mad about? What are you mad about?" I'm playing this conversation in my head, and I'm all, worked up, and I'm like, "Huh, it's just me." But my body doesn't know that. The stress levels, the hormones, everything in my body is out of whack, my nervous system, because it's thinking that it's happening at the moment. And it could be something that happened before. It could be something that it may not even happen that I'm thinking that might happen in my head. Controlling that thought, keeping every thought captive, it is very conducive to where you want to go. Is that thought productive to where I want to go? Is that thought helping me to where I want to go? We think of relationships. Will that relationship help me get to where I want to go, to my goals, or is that going to distract me from my goals? Everything that we do, you have to be like laser guided. This is where I want to go. And every decision, it could be in your organizational skills, your business, or nonprofits, whatever circle you're in. You have to have a clear goal. And everyone in your organization bases decisions on that is how is this decision going to help the company be a better service oriented or save money or whatever it is? Or in your case, how is this going to make the impact of what the podcast, when you're wanting to do with the podcast, how is that going to influence? If it's not going to influence, then it's a distraction. When they train the FBI on counterfeit money, they don't train them on the counterfeits. They train on real bills because they look at it so well, the $100 bill, that when they see a counterfeit, oh, they can spot it. Same thing with you. Everything that you do, you hone it to that idea. How is this going to help me? If it doesn't help me, it's counterfeit. Get it out of here. Get out of my mind. It's a distraction. And you can apply that to any part of your life, keeping every thought captive.
I love that. I love that. I was curious. So, a lot of your responses have resolved around faith, and I really respect that and I really admire that. But to your point of as you start to get more into it and get more experience, do you feel like actually having those tangible successes has anything to do with you being able to control your thoughts? Or is it just as important that you're able to control them when you're in that building phase as well, before you've seen anything like tangible?
You could get real caught up in yourself and full of yourself. This happened because of my intelligence or my contract negotiations or whatever your skill is. You can practice your skills. You can do all these things and you may or may not have success. But when the Lord's in it or your faith is in it, he uses it actually the opposite. The less skilled you are, that's who he uses. Why? To glorify himself, to make it even more known. Yeah, this person, the society discarded, those are the success stories that we see them throughout history, throughout the Bible. We see them. Why? Because that just, magnifies it. Why am I saying all that? Because if I think of myself as if anything that I've done because of me, myself, and I totally lost the point. If I don't point you to the direction of there's something greater, there's something bigger out there. I'm not saying that all the religions are the same and love and Hinduism and Buddhism and Shintoism and Catholicism and Christianity, they're not all the same. They're totally different. But we have to realize and understand that if there's something greater than just you, that's where the growth happens. That's when everything starts to really take place.
Bill is having a very busy week because his daughter is graduating college. So I want to close out the podcast by asking Bill, is there anything you're currently working on that you're excited about? Any initiatives, and how can people support you and stay connected with you?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm already missing this podcast. So it was a pleasure speaking with you. You made me feel real at ease, real comfortable. Thank you. I wear several different hats with the Association of Ecuadorians here in Georgia, with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, with Latinx, and my local chambers. And the one thing that we want, July 15th is our first FIFA Mundial game. The World Cup is going to be here in the United States, here in Atlanta. So we want to make sure that we offer different activities for both the Ecuadorian community and just the general Hispanic community. Follow us on Instagram. My personal Instagram is Bill Vega USA, or ASEG, ASEG, Association de Ecuadorianos in Georgia. And of course, we're doing a lot of different celebrations for 4th of July, Diez de Agosto, the celebration of the Nueve de Octubre. One of the things that everybody always tells me when they're outside of the country, when I ask them, what do you miss the most about being back home? And the first thing they tell me is family. I really can't help with the family part. But the second thing they always tell me is food and the festivals and being together as a culture. And that we can do. We can provide those activities. We can make you feel like back home. We have the food almost like back home. Even though we're outside of the borders that our parents grew up in, that we may have grown up in, we can still celebrate that here. We can celebrate it with our families. There's a lot to be expected. There's a lot of stuff that's wrong in this country, in this nation. A lot of problems that need to be fixed. But that's the beauty of it. Now I'm asked to be at the table to fix those problems. I'm seated at those tables to fix those problems. I'm part of the solution to fix those problems. That makes all the difference. That mentality of I don't let things happen to me. I'm the one who's steering what happens to me, not only to me, but to my children and to my great grandchildren and to their great grandchildren. That generational thinking isn't just the next year, 3 years, 30 years. It's got to go down for many, many generations. That's where we're going to see the growth. That's where we're going to see change. That's where we're going to see a systemic change, that we are part of the solution. We're not just going to be there, complaining. You have to be involved. Those that can vote, they are able to vote. You have to vote. And if you can't vote, at least you can help. You can help cabbage. You can help volunteer. We have to be active. We have to show ourselves in the spaces.
Bill, thank you so much for your time. And thank you to anyone listening to this podcast. And of course, follow. Feel free to message me on any of my social media. I am very responsive. And at that, we will close out this podcast.